At first glance, everything here looks simple. Sand, steel, glass, and money. On one side the sea, on the other the desert, and between them a city that rose like a mirage. Doha shines, but behind that glow, there is a world you won't find in any investment brochure. A world of conversations, not paragraphs. A world of relationships, not procedures. A world where business is not mathematical, it's personal. Qatar is not a country you simply enter. Qatar is a country you are allowed into. You can have a product, capital, a plan, even recommendations from Europe or the US, but if you don't have the right person, you won't do anything. Here, the key doesn't lie in an office, but in someone's hand. Because Qatar moves to the rhythm of the desert, and the desert teaches humility. In the West, business is numbers. In Qatar, it's gestures. In the West, your CV matters. In Qatar, your reputation. In Europe and America, a contract is law. Here, it is your word, and although it may seem like a world at odds with globalization, it is precisely this world that defines it today. Because in an age of artificial intelligence, automation, and algorithms, Qatar reminds the world that, in the end, a human being still makes the final decision. This is a country that crossed from one era to another without losing anything on the way. From tents to skyscrapers, from caravans to LNG terminals, from desert wells to global investments. But despite the speed of modernization, Qatar has preserved something that cannot be copied. The mentality of a community where everyone knows everyone, and every decision has a face. That's exactly why entering this market is not a sprint, but a pilgrimage. It's not about what you have, but who you are. Not about how much you can pay, but who is willing to trust you. Because trust in Qatar is not an emotion, it's infrastructure. In a world building bridges from concrete, they still build bridges from people. When you land in Doha for the first time, everything seems straightforward. You drive from the airport along a smooth highway, passing hotels, office towers, convention centers. It feels like a new Dubai. But that's an illusion. Dubai is open like a store. Qatar is closed like a safe. It only opens for those who know how to knock. Because in Qatar, nothing happens by accident. Even silence has its own structure here. Every meeting has its ritual. First tea, then conversation, then silence, which is a test. If you survive the silence, a smile appears. And if the smile appears, a proposal may follow. But not right away. In Qatar, time is not the enemy. Time is part of the transaction. This country does not forgive haste. It does not tolerate pressure. It does not like raised voices. Everything here happens to the rhythm of a calm breath. The West thinks in quarters. Qatar thinks in generations. When they say soon, they might mean in a year or in 5. And if you can't accept that, you shouldn't even start. Because entering the Qatari market is not an administrative process. It is a process of adaptation. You have to stop speaking only your own language and start speaking in their tone. You must learn that yes doesn't always mean yes, and we will see doesn't mean no. In a world where Western business has embraced brutal honesty, Qatar still lives in the art of courtesy. But behind that softness, there is steel. Qatar is one of the most demanding markets in the world. Here, every partner expects excellence, punctuality, but above all, loyalty. Betrayal committed once is never forgotten. And a reputation you build for years can vanish in a single conversation. This is a country that does not need more companies. It needs new ideas, and people who understand that in a world built on the power of relationships, strength doesn't flow from contracts, but from culture. Entering the Qatari market doesn't mean opening a business. It means earning trust. And that, in this part of the world, is worth more than billions. Because where the sand ends, influence begins. And influence in Qatar doesn't have an address, it has a name. When you come to Qatar for the first time, everything looks orderly. The city seems like the work of an architect who drew the future on a blank sheet of paper. But that's just the surface. In Qatar, there is no map you can truly read. There are only people. And they decide where the invisible roads lead. The Qatari market is a labyrinth built from surnames, not from streets, regulations, or offices. In this country, Formalities are just a shadow of reality. What really matters is not written in any document. What matters is who stands behind you, who introduced you, who says one good word about you in the right place. If you think entering this market is a matter of a business plan, you're lost. In Qatar, you don't start with an idea. You start with a person, with a meeting that means nothing until they look you in the eye and feel that you are credible. Because in a world where reputation is worth its weight in gold, your face is your currency. Everyone who has succeeded here will tell you the same thing. Before you open an office, you must open your heart. Before you find a partner, you must find a sponsor. A local partner without whom you don't exist. The system is called sponsorship, but it's not about paperwork. It's a relationship that resembles a marriage. Once formed, it binds you for a long time. Because a sponsor is not just a shareholder. He is a guarantor, translator, defender, and sometimes judge. In Qatar, every foreigner needs such a guide. Not because the law says so, but because the culture demands it. A sponsor takes responsibility for you. If you fail, he loses face. And in the Middle East, losing face is worse than losing money. That's why before anyone agrees to stand behind you, they will watch you. For a long time, patiently, carefully. Don't expect formal tests. In Qatar, the test is the conversation. Your words, your tone, your patience, the way you react to silence. Because here, silence speaks louder than arguments. If you try to speed things up, you lose. If you try to push, you close doors. In the world of the desert, haste is dangerous. It can destroy you. Qataris trust only those who know how to wait. Whoever can wait can understand. And understanding is the foundation of every contract. To understand this country does not mean to translate its words. It means to feel the rhythm of the conversation. To know when to talk and when to stay quiet. To know that inshallah can mean yes, no, wait, or we'll see. The first meetings are always a test, not of your product but of you. Before you present your offer, they will ask about your family. Before you propose a deal, they will serve you tea. Before any question about price appears, there will be a question about where you're from. And if they decide that you speak with respect, that you don't treat their country like a market but like a partner, then the real conversation begins. But be careful. Begins doesn't mean ends. In Qatar, nothing happens quickly. Everything has its tempo, its temperature, its moment. If you're in a hurry, you lose. If you show frustration, the topic is closed. If you want to start selling immediately, you won't sell anything. First, they must see that you understand the world you've entered. Because Qatar is not the West dressed up as the East. It is the East that has learned modernity on its own terms. Here, modern technology stands next to traditional values. Contracts are signed in marble offices, but decisions are often made at home, at the table, between prayer and a meal. In this country, business still smells of incense, not corporate coffee. What Western investors see as formality, in Qatar is a gesture. A handshake carries the weight of a paragraph. An invitation to dinner carries the weight of a contract. And if someone tells you, "We will talk later," it doesn't mean they're avoiding you. It means they are checking if you are patient. Because patience in this country is the language of respect. So if you want to enter the Qatari market, you have to learn a new geography. Not the one on maps, but the one made of relationships. Every person you meet is a point on an invisible network. Every name is a road, every meeting a crossroads. If you learn how to move through it, you will go further than any GPS could take you. But if you arrive convinced that everything can be bought, you'll get lost at the first turn. Because in Qatar, access cannot be bought. In Qatar, access is earned. And that is why those who survive the first months of uncertainty gain something priceless, a place at a table that is not for everyone. The Qatari market is not a marketplace. It's an audience chamber, and only those who know how to behave there will hear the one phrase that opens all doors. Welcome, my friend. In Qatar, you don't sell until you're invited. You don't pitch until they know you. You don't negotiate until they trust you. Here, relationship is currency, and trust is a passport. Anyone who thinks they can enter the Qatari market with a briefcase of offers and a ready-made strategy ends up at the airport with a return ticket. Because before you show what you have, you must show who you are. The first meeting never looks the way you expect. You arrive with documents, brochures, spreadsheets, and they start by talking about the weather, about your country, about your family, about how you like Doha. A Western entrepreneur thinks we're wasting time. But that's exactly when time starts working for you. Because in Qatar, small talk is not small. It is groundwork. It is the moment when they decide whether they want to deal with you at all. Every look, every gesture, every pause matters. Qataris don't remember your financial projections. They remember your attitude. Whether you speak calmly, whether you respect silence, whether you try to dominate the conversation. Here, the winner is not the one who talks most. It's the one who talks least, but most precisely. Tea is a ritual. Sometimes, at the first meeting, nothing happens except tea. But that tea means more than any contract. If you drink it with respect, you will come back. If you reject it in haste, you won't sit at that table again. Because in Qatar, you don't reject gestures. This is a country where symbol is more important than words. When you sit down to talk, you don't yet realize you're being judged from the first second. Not by what you brought, but by how you sit. Whether you look them in the eye, whether you listen, whether you interrupt. In a culture where honor is paramount, your tone of voice weighs more than the content of your proposal. If you are too self-confident, you won't be invited back. If you are too timid, you'll disappear in the background. But if you are calm, confident, and patient, the door will begin to open. Every country has its business codes. Qatar has them in gestures. In the way someone pours your tea, in whether they offer a second glass, in whether the conversation lasts longer than 20 minutes, in whether someone repeats your name before you leave. These are tiny signals, but in this country, the small things mean everything. Many Europeans make the same mistake. They think politeness means agreement, but in Qatar, a smile is not confirmation. It is courtesy. The word yes often means maybe. The phrase, "we will see," may be the start of a great partnership, or a gentle farewell. Only experience lets you tell one from the other. The second mistake is haste. A Western entrepreneur comes for a week and wants to arrange everything. He believes that in a world accelerated by technology, speed proves efficiency. But in Qatar, haste is disrespect. If you try to push, you show that you don't understand where you are. Because in the desert, nothing happens fast. Before you reach water, you must walk through sand. The most valuable resource in Qatar is time. If a local partner gives you their time, it means they see potential in you. And if they invite you a second time, it means you passed the test. But don't fool yourself, that's not the end. That's the beginning. Because every conversation after that is another level of trust. In Qatar, relationships are not built in a week. They're built over months, sometimes over years, but once they exist, they're like a fortress. Qataris don't change partners easily. If they trust you once, they stay loyal, and they will defend you even when the wind of politics changes. In this world, loyalty is more valuable than law. So if you come to Qatar looking for quick profit, you'd better turn back. This is not a market that rewards bargain hunters. It rewards bridge builders. It is not a country for salesmen. It is a country for allies, for those who can listen, observe, wait, and return. Entering the Qatari market is not a transaction. It is an initiation. You must learn its rhythm, its breath, its gestures. Understand that every no is just another form of not yet. And that the biggest mistake is trying to speed up a story that has to ripen like a date in the desert. Because Qatar is a country that remembers every conversation, every gesture, every look. If you know how to leave a good memory behind you, you will return. If you don't, you will vanish like the wind that brought you from the west. Tea, silence, a look, a gesture. These are the 4 pillars of Qatari business culture. You won't find them in manuals, you won't see them in presentations, but you will feel them immediately. They form the wall of trust that separates those who came to earn money from those who came to stay. Because in Qatar, business is not just money, it's a way of being. And only those who understand tea instead of a business card will find their place at the table where decisions are made in silence and contracts are signed with a smile. In Qatar, you don't open a company. In Qatar, you open a relationship. That's the first thing you must understand if you truly want to enter this market. Because in this country, business doesn't start with capital. It starts with a person. The sponsor, the local partner, is not a formality. He is the gate, the guardian of the door you must pass through if you want to operate here. On paper, it looks simple. Every foreign entrepreneur needs a local sponsor who owns at least 51% of the company. In practice, that means half of your business does not formally belong to you. A Western mind rebels against this system. How is it possible that someone who doesn't invest $1 owns half your firm? But in Qatar, this is not about money. It's about trust. A sponsor is not an investor. He is a guarantor. His name is your license to exist. Trust in Qatar is a currency you cannot buy. You can only receive it. A sponsor who decides to stand behind you takes responsibility for your decisions. If something goes wrong, his reputation suffers. That's why, before he says yes, he tests you in ways no book can describe. He doesn't look at your documents. He looks at you, at whether you keep your word, at how you speak, how you react, how you behave. In Qatar, a sponsor must feel that you understand the culture, not just the market. You won't find a sponsor through an ad. You find him through people. Someone has to introduce you. Someone has to say you are worth talking to. Because in this world, a recommendation is more than a contract. It is a credit of honor someone risks in your name. If you disappoint him, you don't just disappoint yourself. You disappoint his network, his family, his history. The relationship with a sponsor resembles a marriage. It lasts long, requires patience and mutual understanding. And like in any marriage, trust is built slowly. A sponsor watches. He doesn't push, doesn't declare, but analyzes. If he sees that you act loyally, that you respect his position, and that you don't try to bypass the rules, he starts to trust you. And when the sponsor trusts you, Qatar starts to notice you. Many foreigners make the same mistake. They look for a sponsor out of convenience, not conviction. They choose the first one who agrees. It's like marrying after one date. At first it works, but then come misunderstandings. The sponsor stops picking up the phone. He doesn't fix issues. He doesn't defend your interests. Because in Qatar, a sponsor is not a signature. He is the one who decides whether you are part of the network or just a guest. A good sponsor is not a passive partner. He is your advisor, interpreter, sometimes your diplomat. He will tell you whom you can invite to a meeting and whom you shouldn't. He will tell you which gestures are appropriate and which are offensive. He will warn you before you make a mistake. But only if he sees that you listen, because a sponsor doesn't work for you. He works with you. Many Western investors try to bypass the system using offshore structures or entering via free zones. And yes, there are economic zones where you can operate without a local shareholder. But even then, you still need a local ally. Because in Qatar, law is one thing and reality is another. Formally, you can act alone. Practically, you will achieve nothing without someone who knows which doors exist and which of them can be knocked on. The sponsor is your back, your safety net, your access to rooms that don't sell tickets. Sometimes he is quiet, sometimes very active. Sometimes he talks to you rarely, but when a problem appears, he makes one phone call to the right place, and that's enough. Because his name opens doors you don't even see. In the West, a partner is a legal co-owner. In Qatar, a sponsor is a social partner. His presence gives you legitimacy. Without him, you're just a foreigner who came to earn money. With him, you become part of the ecosystem. And that changes everything. But remember, this relationship works both ways. A sponsor is not your servant. If you try to use him like a tool, you lose. If you treat him like a friend, you gain. If you can listen, observe, show gratitude, you'll be remembered as someone who understands the culture. And in Qatar, that is the highest compliment. You won't find such contracts written down in any legal system. But once you enter the orbit of trust, you'll see that this unwritten agreement works better than many formal laws. Sponsors who support you do it not just for money. They do it for reputation. Because if you succeed, they grow too. And maybe that's why the sponsorship system has survived modernization, the arrival of global corporations, and attempts to liberalize the market. Because it is built on something deeply human, on personal bonds. In a world that automates relationships, Qatar still bets on people. In this game, it's not about having the best product. It's about having the person who will say, "I know him, you can trust him." And then everything changes. Because in Qatar, that one sentence is worth more than $1 million of investment. A sponsor is not just a business partner. He is your passport into a world where doors don't have handles. They have people. In Qatar, wealth is not the problem. Wealth is the background. The real problem is access. In a world where everything shines, the hardest thing is to see which light leads you and which blinds you. Entering the Qatari market isn't about finding a door. Doors are everywhere. The art lies in knowing which ones are real and who opens them. When you look at Doha from above, you see a city that looks like a global dream. Towers, highways, a port, lights, movement. But beneath that structure there is another Qatar. A Qatar built from connections, trust, and influence. This Qatar is not on Google Maps. You won't find it on government websites. It has its own geography, which you learn only in practice. Every sector, from finance to construction, is like a closed circle. From the outside, it looks like an open market, but inside it is ruled by loyalties. Companies, families, networks of relationships. Sometimes one surname is enough to open every door. Sometimes an entire portfolio is meaningless. Because in this country, capital is only one element of the game. The real currency is the relationship. Western investors often fail to understand that in Qatar, reputation is an institution. It's something built over generations and passed on like inheritance. If your sponsor's or partner's name is respected, your path is smooth. If it is questionable, every smile will be courtesy and every promise an empty gesture. Qatar does not say no. Qatar lets you disappear. In this world, decisions are made quietly. Sometimes in a hotel lobby, sometimes at home, sometimes over dinner after prayer. You won't hear the word deal. You won't see notes. But if the conversation went well, the phone will ring. And if it doesn't, don't call them. Because in Qatar, silence also means something. Sometimes it is a promise. Sometimes a polite refusal. Don't try to batter down doors. Don't try to force answers. This is a country that moves to the rhythm of ritual. Every action has its moment. Every yes has to ripen. Every proposal has to have a face. If you try to speed things up, you awaken mistrust. If you let time flow naturally, you awaken respect. When you receive an invitation, that is already a sign. It's not just a meeting, it's verification. In Qatar, they don't invite random people. If someone says come, it means you were discussed. That someone recommended you. That you are already part of the conversation before you sit at the table. That's when the real game begins. Don't walk in with a list of demands. Don't speak the language of pressure. No one in Qatar likes to be persuaded. They want to be inspired. Instead of talking only about what you want to sell, show what you want to create together. The word together is magic here. It opens the space where trust begins. A meeting in Doha is a theater of gestures. Your clothes, your punctuality, how you hold a cup of tea, the tone of your voice. All of this says more about you than your portfolio. In a culture where form is content, every small oversight is interpreted. If you're 5 minutes late, it's not a logistical error, it's a lack of respect. If you bring a gift with your logo, it's not a present, it's marketing. And marketing at the beginning smells like desperation. Qatari partners value subtlety. They prize calm, composure, emotional intelligence. They don't like rush or nervousness. In their eyes, a person's worth is measured by patience. The more you can wait, the more they trust you. Because whoever can wait understands the desert, and whoever understands the desert can survive. Entering the Qatari market is not a recruitment process. It is an initiation. You must show that you know the difference between ambition and arrogance, that you know when to speak and when to be quiet, that you can put your ego behind the culture. Because in this country, Success comes to those who can be modest without being weak. Sometimes the most important talks begin in silence. Sometimes a business partner simply looks at you and you don't know what to think. It's not a test of courage. It's a test of authenticity. In Qatar, people can spot falseness faster than they recognize a logo. They see it in your eyes, in your posture, in whether you look at them as investors or as people. Because no one here wants to be a client. Everyone wants to be a partner. And if you treat them as partners, they will respond in kind. But if you treat them as a tool, they will close doors you will never open again. That's why they say that in Qatar, the doors are golden but have no handles. Because you don't open them with force, but with understanding. Not with sheer determination, but with grace. Not with strategy alone, but with respect. And when they finally open, you no longer need a map. Then you know you have truly entered, not the market, the trust. And that, in Qatar, is more valuable than oil.